Good evening, Mackinac Race fans. I'm Dobbs Davis with the Sunday evening, July 21st report on the 100th Bayview Mackinac Race. We have a very interesting set of tales to share with you this evening going into this second night of this 205-mile race. But I want to recognize my sponsors for this show, VanTol and Vitelli Insurance Group and LCS Record Retrieval. And of course the overall sponsor of the race, National Fleet Services. Here is where we are, going to our YB tracker web. And by the way, I'm doing this on the browser version of this, but for those that have interest and are interested in seeing this, there is a mobile app that's quite good. Doesn't have all the features that we see here, but it's a pretty good way of staying in touch with those that you're trying to track. Okay, so lots of blues out here. I'm going to zoom in closer to the race course. As you can see, I've triggered the excuse me, the windy app showing roughly the wind direction. It's roughly this. Some reports out on the race course indicate slightly different conditions, but it's not far off. A little more breeze up toward the UP shoreline than over here on the Michigan side. This high pressure ridge that we saw earlier in previous shows has weakened a little bit, but it's still pretty light out there. I'm going to share with you a few tales, but I think before we get into that, one thing to note is that we do have some finishers here at the island. Let's see, I will go to this page. Excuse me, this shows the teams that have finished to date. They're all, and that just updated with a new boat, Mark Hollerbach's Cento, which is Santa Cruz 70. That's being chartered for this race from Kent Culpert, which is usually sails this boat as Trident. But anyway, this gives you a rundown of who finished in what order and their finish times. Earlier in the last show, I showed you the very close finish between Wizard, that was first across the finish line at 1:12:34 this afternoon, and looks like 9 seconds later was Chris Duhan's Mockingbird. WinQuest was just shortly after that. So you can see these times if you like and see how close things are, but only Class A finishers at this stage. One thing I did notice is if you go to the results page and try to look at corrected time scores, you get an error. I don't know that maybe they haven't entered the ratings in for it yet, or what exactly is going on. Maybe they're just waiting for a few other classes to finish. The other thing to note is that we have a couple of multihulls that have finished the race, led by Adagio. That's Mike Scarl's Goujon 35 Trimaran. And here's a retirement against the wind, Rob Farr's CNC 35 Mark 1. I also know through let's say an unofficial channel, maybe they haven't contacted the race committee yet, but I got word from the painkiller out there, Alice Martin's first 35, that they were having rudder bearing problems. A lot of play in the rudder bearing is the report, and they were going to retire to head toward, I think they might be heading toward Harbor Springs, not sure, but that's their next event, and it's a North American championship, so they want to pivot toward being ready for that. So I think there's some other retirements that are just not on the board yet, but those sometimes are also shown on the app. So here we are. This is the race course area, and you can see the fleet spread out. They're not going fast. It is light air. The champagne sailing that they had this morning, I'm calling it coffee sailing now, because they've got to fight through this tonight. The night fighters are going to have their hands full. working through every little zephyr and light air patch out here. Let's zoom in one more and look at where things are. Still a couple of multi-hulls out here, a couple of boats approaching the finish. Madcap, Santa Cruz 52, the MC2, which is, I believe that's an old IMS boat. I'm blanking on the name. Anyway, it's an old IMS boat, Idler. I think that's the old Idler, and that boat still out there sailing. And a couple of other boats out here. Well, Whitehawk, the huge 140-foot Bruce King design ketch, is they're making their way toward the finish. Peter Thornton's boat, and these guys in here, other big boats. But where I want to talk about now is more with these classes that are here in the fleet. First of all, let's see. So Class 0. Double zero, sorry. These are the multi-hulls. They're making their way out. That light air is never great for multi-hulls. They've got a fair amount of wetted surface for their size usually, and but 2.4 knots is actually okay given what we're going to see in some of the monohulls, and they're making their way towards the finish here. We'll turn them off for now, and then let's look at Class D. I'm going to zoom in a bit here because I had some good comms today with Lynn Kotwicki. She's on Hot Ticket. This is a team that is done many of these races, and she had some photos and a little report from the race area. Where is the Hot Ticket? There they are. So Hot Ticket, Mike Kirkman's boat. Mike and Bob Kirkman, actually, and they've got an interesting story, and I wanted to alert you all to, sorry, it's not that page, it's this page. When you go to the roster of all the boats on what we call a scratch sheet, and these are, actually, we can refine this a little bit better. Where are we here? Competitors, scratch sheet. Here we go. Now these are all divided into classes, and Class D is comprised of all the J120s. There's many of those. Most of them are at Bayview, some are at other clubs, and they're a highly competitive class. They have been for, I don't know, a couple decades now for sure. And when you go to this and you can click on the link for each entry, you get a pretty good detailed biography of that team and who's on the team here. They make a note that they're Corinthian crew, all amateur crew, no pros on board. They also have a little bit here on the history of the boat and how many Mac races they've done and other sorts of interesting biographical info. And then another one for those that are trying to track down their pals is where they're parked. So when they get here, it's going to be quite crowded on the island. So I found that interesting, is where to find the boats. And then if you're interested in the technical aspects of rating and what their rating certificate looks like, there's a hot link to that here too. So it's a good resource, I think, for those that want to dig in a little deeper. And of course, a nice thumbnail photo of the team and the boat. So I will share with you some photos that Lynn shared. That's what it looks like out there, folks. Pretty glassy. This is just off the northern Michigan coast. You can see the land is not very far away. Very light conditions. Boats are dead upright. They've got probably a small staysail up. And there's another photo here that I wanted to share from Lynn. This fellow's name is Dan Lorenz. He's on the Hot Ticket team and focused on driving. I like this photo, not just for the focus and to bring some personalities into the story, but also in the background over here. That's another competitor. And so if you think this is something where people just relax, it's definitely not the case. This takes a high amount of concentration, and when your competitors are close by, that really sharpens the edge for that. There's little tiny zephyrs of breeze. The boats look like they're on port tack, so this breeze would be coming off the shore. What little there is, and they focus on every little bit. So I wanted to just point that out. Now, I'm not sure if that is in the background is another J120, or if it's possibly Tim Profit, who I had a nice chat with on Fast Tango. So let me bring him and his team into this. They are in Class J, and here's the Fast Tango. They're leading Class J still. Now, Tim had a great story to tell, as he always does. He's a reigning champion in this class for this race. He's certainly done well. He did well last week, won the Super Mac in his class. Last year he won not only this race, he won the Chicago race, he ran the Trans-Superior race, and at my club, the Storm Trysail Club, we also gave him an annual award just in recognition of those outstanding achievements for offshore sailing. But he said that at the start they were OCS, which means they were over the line at the start, at the starting signal. On course side is what that acronym means. And that means you got to go back and start the race properly. He said that was a blessing in disguise for them because their intent was to head a little bit offshore from the start, go a little bit right on the race course, and instead this forced them to go left, and it turns out that was a great decision. So so he had fun with that. He said it must have been divine intervention, is his quote. That got them off to what he thought was a great start. He said in the report, and we talked about an hour or so ago, they were positioned off Cordwood Point, which I don't know the geography here. I'm thinking that's Cordwood Point possibly, but his thoughts on what's coming ahead were he said very interesting, because they are considering going into here in search of breeze. This place apparently is called Hammond Bay. In fact, I looked it up. I think I have it. Where is it? I think I have it here on this chart. So they're positioned out here, if you see the cursor, and Hammond Bay is this big indentation in the coast. And what Tim had to say about Hammond Bay was not great. He said that's he said in 100 years of Mac races, nobody goes in there. He said if you go in there, it's a no-go zone, and if you go in there, you're going to die. He said there were many times that they've passed boats that have gone in there looking for breeze, only to pass them on the outside. But he feels like they're in a bit of a precarious position here, because their rivals, who are astern of them now, may be bringing up new breeze. So they're basically playing defense at this moment, and trying to think about keeping the boat moving. Now, while looking at this sked, 1.7 knots, that doesn't sound like much, but that's actually going along pretty well, given the glassy photos that I just showed you from Hot Ticket. He said he's lost track of how many sail changes they've had on this race. He said just in the last few hours they've had the A1 spinnaker up, the A3, the S2, and right now, at the time that we talked, they had a Windseeker, which is a very small staysail. In fact, this is not a Windseeker in the photo that I've got. I just got a few new photos from Lynn. But the Windseeker is basically a staysail. It's very small, has a high clew. It's intended to be flown in the fore triangle of the boat to fill a gap between a larger spinnaker or headsail, and the mainsail. It helps regulate the airflow through that slot in the sail plan, and it just makes the flow more efficient, helps focus it, and thereby gives you some speed. In very light wind, when literally a sail, a big spinnaker or a big Genoa, is too heavy and the air is is moving too slowly to fill those sails. A little wind seeker like this, or a staysail acting as a wind seeker, can actually propel you along. So he says that the crossover of where that sail is effective until you get into the larger sail is about 3 knots of wind. So they were ghosting along at less than a knot when I spoke to them, and then as we were talking, the breeze had come up a little bit. They'd increase in speed, and then they were deploying their A1 spinnaker again. But the breeze direction shown here on windy, again, this is where this doesn't always represent reality. Basically, the wind direction. Oops. Let me zoom back in. Use that tool. The wind direction that they're seeing out there in these ghosting conditions is offshore. So they're on port tack or port jibe. The wind is roughly coming off the land, and that's what they're using. So the temptation is to go further in towards the land to get more of this offshore breeze. But as he noted before, Hammond Bay could be a trap. So we'll see how they play that in the next few hours on their way toward the finish line. And then the other part of this that he wanted to point out was the esprit de corps. He said they got a great team. They had one team member had to drop out due to illness a few days before the race. They normally sail with 10. Now they have 9 on board. They chose not to replace that crewman given the light air forecast. And he said they got plenty of food. They're in good shape. They're not worried about, and he's a smoker. He's not worried about running out of cigarettes. And so he said the team is really focused. They're pumped up from their last race victory, and the esprit de corps on board is great. So he's got all good reports from the Fast Tango. So wanted to share that with you all. Let's see. With latest report from Lynn is a couple things. I'll share this with you. This is Brian Greenabow sitting on the leeward side. That doesn't look like port tack to me. That looks like starboard or looks like nothing. One thing to notice here is the mainsail in this photo is actually furled and on the boom. She says the main is down to calm the boat and eliminate the flopping, because what happens out here is when the sails are not filled by wind pressure and there's any kind of seaway at all, they just flop back and forth, and that's both annoying and not fast. So smallest headsail possible. Now this is a Genoa. This is not a small wind seeker, so that might be something they don't have that Fast Tango has. Although this is an interesting photo, certainly a nice sunset shot there. Looks like they might be flying that headsail from the end of the spinnaker pole just to get it out and away from the mainsail, a little bit more projection. I'm just guessing at that. Some boats have these specialty sails we call either code zeros or headsail set flying, and they often are tacked out at the end of the pole for this purpose. In fact, that's probably what that is, because it looks like they use a furled Genoa that you can see here in the photo. So the teams are going to be out there fighting every inch tonight. It's going to be a tough night for everybody, but we wish them all luck. And stay tuned. I hope everybody's enjoying this broadcast. And again, we're fortunate to have our sponsors to help support this. I will go to this page and give you this photo and closing slide. This is Natalie J. Dr. Phil O'Neill's boat and his team making their finish this afternoon. You can see it was light air coming in for them, and this is what everybody's going to be facing tonight for sure. But I thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. I'm going to try to do another very early show at dawn in the morning. So on behalf of VanTol and Vitelli Insurance Group and LCS Record Retrieval, I'm Dobbs Davis signing off for now, and thanks for tuning in.